Hi everyone, I'm Chloe from Career Practitioners Division at Workforce Singapore. Today, I'm very excited to welcome all of you to our very first webinar, Maximizing Employability in the 21st Century, especially for our career professionals. As the practice of career development proliferates, there's an increasing number of career assessment tools in the market that comes in many forms and are able to measure multiple dimensions. So it's actually very important for all of us to be able to know what are the latest technology and tools that we can actually leverage on as we profile our clients. So today we are very excited and delighted to have with us two experts in this area, Ms. Annette Johnson and Mr. Gary Gunn, who will be sharing with us on Vip24 and also SPRI profiling tools. So at this moment, if you don't know friends or colleagues who are very excited or want to know more about the tools, do share with them the link so that they can join us anytime, anywhere. So before we start, may I take a quick tour around the very cool functions of Gliza Live, especially for our first timer. So if you were to join us to look at the bottom of the screen, you'll be seeing 4 icons. The first one on the right you'll be seeing will be the heart-shaped icon. That's the one that you can click on when you want to tell the speakers, hey, I really like what you are sharing on the slide. The next one is a pencil icon for you to take down the notes while the speaker is sharing the content. And the next tile that you'll be seeing will be the 4 tiles that will give you an overview of the slides that the speakers have shared so far. And the last one that we really would like you to tap on will be the bubble icon. So that's the one that you'll be able to share and ask questions of, to the speaker. So there'll be a Q&A session for the speaker at the end of the talk. So please do keep your questions coming. So now I'll be introducing our first speaker, Ms. Annette Johnson, who is very passionate about human resource and organizational development. She's very accomplished in career counseling, career coaching, and also HR. And she's also one of the very first master trainer that we have in Singapore and in Asia. So she has trained more than 700 career counselors and also companies worldwide. I'm sure now we are all very eager to hear from Annette. So Ms. Annette, please.
Thank you. So as I was introduced, my name is Annette Johnson, and I come from CXS. CXS is a company that works on powering human development with education and employability analytics for the future workforce. We are currently active in 32 countries worldwide, and we look into how do we use data profiling analytics and validated research tool to create the workforce that we need for tomorrow. We have been told by Gartner that we are one of the few companies that deliver measurable improvement learning outcomes for the individuals for their life beyond the education years. We have quite a global footprint around the world. We exist in Asia, Europe, and some part of South America. The reason why we're here today is because of employability. And like we all know, about 50% of the jobs will disappear in a few years. And how do we prepare for this? How do we use technology to actually prepare for the technology's fault in these jobs coming and going? So when we looked at this, we asked ourselves 2 questions. How do businesses and individuals prepare for these changes? And how can policymakers create effective policies that help build future-ready workforce? When we asked us these questions, we came up with a system we call Actualize. The focus today won't be the total part of Actualize, mostly focusing on the profiling tool. Actualize is an entire workforce ecosystem where we look at supply to understand what does our workforce look like. We then also look into demands and basically what are the industry asking for. When we know these 2 data points, we can then understand what do our current workforce have and what are they lacking for what the demand is needing and asking for, and then we can go into upskilling and understand this. When we have a national portal like this, the government actually are able to look at this data to understand how do we improve every part of our country to prepare for the workforce of tomorrow. This is actually happening in Malaysia right now. Malaysia is the first country that have employed the whole Actualize platform from demand upskilling to supply. Currently, the graduates are coming every year on this platform, and they are also putting all the professionals to understand what the workforce is about. Further as well, the Vip24 tool have been used in GTI job fairs, basically to create the job fairs a bit more online. So we are taking away the normal CV as a paper thing and putting it online. This means that instead of candidates coming to the job fair giving their paper CVs, everything is now through a QR code, which means all the employees can then quickly tag them to certain jobs, say we're interested, and they can follow up on the people they're actually interested in instead of getting about 1,000 CVs and then sifting through them when they come back to their office. Here in Singapore, we have worked very closely with WSG and actually have certified all their career counselors into using Vip24. This is to help them understand their job seekers better in a more holistic way, not just very, very tailored towards career, but understanding them as people to help them take better choices and help them get a better career. In Norway, where we've been the longest, we have worked very closely with the Norwegian Labour Force Agency to look into how can we shorten the time for people that's unemployed and underemployed. Basically, how can we get them faster out in the workplace? There was a third-party research done where they looked into 5 offices. 4 of these offices used Vip24. They had 30% more job placements in the same time frame as the one office that didn't use Vip24. The last case I'm going to show with you today is basically improving the national absences rates in Norway. Basically, how do we get people that's on sick leave back to work? And not just back to work, but staying in work. So the long-term effect of the study that was done was that 70% of the people that was permanently on long-term sick leave went into 100 full-time positions, meaning they were back into work over 2 years and haven't gone on sick leave again. 23% decided to change their career and go more into education, universities, and then 4% decided to actually go down from full-time to part-time to focus on other things. 72% of the participants in the project never went on sick leave again after going through Vip24 and figuring out what they want to do. I'm pretty sure now you're a bit curious about what Vip24 is. Some of you hopefully have tried out the tool. We gave out a link for you to try it out if you were interested in it. If not, you can still try it out afterwards. We will keep the link active for throughout the day. So now is how do we then take education to employability? What we focus on when we look at it, as we say, we have to start with the individual, okay? So we look at the profile first. Who are you? What drives you? What your purpose in life? Then we can look at your mindset. How do you learn? How do you drive? Then we can start looking at the skill sets. Once we are confirmed that we know who we are, what we want to do, and what drives us, we can start looking at what kind of skill sets do we have? What kind of competences we have? And then we can start assessing the skills. But first, you have to look into who you are. We talk about words like self-actualization, self-efficacy, resilience, self-mastery, and purpose. So basically, how can we make sure that everybody have purpose and meaning in life? The 3 dimensions that we talk about when it's about understanding ourselves, it's about who we are, how we learn, and how we grow. Today, the focus will be mostly about who we are, as that's the profiling tool that we use for that. So who we are, we use something we call Vip24. Vip24 is kind of this holistic profiling tool to understand the fit between a person's motivation and the job role and the job environment they're going to go in. When we say holistic, it's because of a lot of different theories put together to understand a person. We don't focus on one thing, we focus on several profiles and several data points. The reason for this is there's 2 reasons for this. The one is that we want to shift the focus of not just focusing on a skill set or the education or the experience a person has, but also who they are. Because now, before people change jobs sort of within the same genre, now because jobs are disappearing, we need to actually maybe change our whole career, change our whole job. So we have an education in something, and then suddenly that job goes away. How do we handle that transition? And how are we able to find a new job, but with the same interests? This is why we use Vip24, and we also believe in online results. So right away after you have answered, you get your report. It's not about waiting for a PDF or you have to talk to somebody. It's supposed to be something you understand right away. So Vip24 actually stands for values, interests, and preference in the 24 hours perspective. So the first one is the Vip24 cycle, where we talk about what is important to you and how is it right now. And then interest is more about what motivates you, what drives you, beyond professions. So when we talk about interest, it's not about the job you're doing, but what interests you. So if you're an accountant, what is interesting to you is actually numbers. That's what you're looking at, and analysis. When you talk about preferences, we talk about if the world were perfect, how do you want it to be like? So who are you regardless of the situation you're in or what is expected of you? So going a bit more in detail into these profiling tools, the first one, the interest profile as we call it, is about your interests, your motivation, and your experiences. It's about getting the candidate to start thinking about who they are. This information we can start then looking into what kind of professions, if this is what you're interested in, this is what motivates you, this is what drives you, what kind of profession should we put you in? What kind of job match as we're talking about? The reason for this is if you want somebody to be employable, if you want somebody to get a job, get out there, help them figure this out, they have to understand itself. It doesn't matter if you as a counselor or as an HR practitioner understand it. If the person doesn't understand it themselves, it will be hard for them to make the choice. So by doing this, we're starting the reflection process already. The next step is to look into who they are. So what kind of work environment would they thrive in? This is to complement the interest profile to actually to mirror the image and quality assure. So once you know what you're interested in, if you're interested in helping, supporting people, you can still be interested in doing that from behind a computer. It doesn't have to be face-to-face to be able to help and support other people. This is where the personality comes in. And when we talk about preferences, it's because it's not about what you're able to do, it's what you prefer to do. The reason for the preference profile as well is about, again, getting even a deeper understanding of who you are as a person. The last one is the My Values, or the value profile, which talks about, it's a self-reflection and conversation tool that talks about what is important to you in the different areas that we're talking about, which is a 24-hour perspective. So we're not talking about you only at work or in a work situation, it's about your whole life, both at home and at work. And then it's a gap analysis, so we look into not just what is important to you, but also how it is right now. Because then we can talking about energy. Are there things in your life giving you energy, or is it taking away energy for you? This is also, from a counselor standpoint, a touch point to start. Where do we start working? If your motivation level is low, because most of your things in your life take energy away from you, the starting point in the conversations to start to, how do we get your energy levels up? Because it's very hard to shift a job. Things won't change that much if you shift jobs or you find something else to do if your motivation level still is low. You have to start by where is the motivation. If it is the job, you can make a change. If it's your personal life, then you have to start there. A lot of people ask, why do we use 3 profiles? Why not just one? The reason for this is about accuracy and a better quality assurance and sharpening on the image. When you have different profiles saying the same thing, correlating, looking at the same thing, you get a better predictability and probability of making the right choices, having the right information, and making the right recommendations and predictions to the people. A lot of people, probably you guys as well, have recognized some of the terms, some of the letter codings and these kind of things. The difference is that we have actually taken a lot of these different theories and put them together. We focus on, we have created our own questionnaires and everything, so everything is ours, but we are focusing on a bigger picture. So we're looking at flow with 60 Michal. We talk about sense of coherence with Antonovsky, because we want to look at life mastery. Because now, a lot of people, it's not just getting a job anymore, it's also being able to handle a job and handle transitions. When we certify people in our trio, we talk about a narrative guidance methodology, because career counseling, and regardless if you're a career coach, HR practitioner, or actually a career counselor, it's about how do we help people find meaning and purpose in life. It means you have to look at their whole life. If the profile is saying one thing, but they have a background in something else, we can't ignore their past, we can't ignore the future, and we can't ignore the present situation either, if you want to help people to figure this out. The career stories is also quite wide. It goes into different touch points, and this is because we want to see the bigger picture, not just focus on one thing, to be able to understand the person the best. To make a good career choice, there's a lot of research around this. The latest research is adding on a 4-point. The first thing is they has to look into self-insight. And this is why our whole methodology is around the person needing to understand themselves. If they don't understand themselves, it's very hard to figure out what I want to do. Once you understand yourself, you can look into what we call possibility competence. Possibility competence is about what is out there. Based on what I find interesting, what actually are my options? And for a lot of people right now, that's quite hard. You have a lot of job portals, you have a lot of things out there, but it's hard to figure out, to combine both the information about what I find interesting and what kind of job I want, compared to what kind of work environment do I want, and how do I able to find that by just looking at a job description, for example. The next step then is actually decision-making competence. Regardless if you know that yourself quite well and you're able to actually figure out how the market looks like, if you're not able to make a decision, you won't be able to make it. And it's the same thing if you as a career professional have found all this job for a person, like look at this and look at all the things that are out there, and they stay like, I don't know, they won't be able to actually get the job regardless if everything is laid out for them. You have to have a competence about making decisions. And that is also beyond just saying yes or no. What are the consequences of doing this or doing that? The fourth thing, that's the biggest thing that come the last year, is transitional competence. How are we able to go through change over time? How are we able to cope with the changes that are happening? And we call it rapid change. It means right now, a lot of us, if you look at our parents, or for me, look at my parents, which is the older generation, a lot of them have had the same job for 10 plus years, maybe 15 years before they made a change. Now, we don't have that privilege anymore. We usually have a job now, they're predicting every 5 years we change our job. Doesn't mean we change our company, but we change our job. Our job scopes are changing so fast because of technology and how the environment are changing. And this is something we actually have to just be able to handle. How do we go through these changes, and how do we prepare the people to go through these changes? This is an example of how we're using the profiling tool to do just that. So when we look at Vip24, this is Grace. She is a nurse, so we can potentially left nursing or still in nursing, but she wants to transition over more to hospitality because she sees that that's a different change and she wants something new in her life. Her profile, if you look at the code social, enterprising, realistic, is a perfect match to the nursing job, but she still matches quite high with hospitality, right? That means that we can make that change for her. She can still be happy in that kind of job. And that means as well, if you put it into for a hotel or somebody looking for somebody like that, she can use that information to make her better at work. You can use that also in a hiring process as part of the filtering. Is there a job match before we look at the skills that she's requiring? So a lot of you now is like, how does actually all of this help me as a career counselor, HR practitioner, or coach with this kind of a tool? This is actually the whole methodology and framework that we are putting into this, because it all leads to what we call career success. Career success is actually the ability to be able to have a job again and again. It won't happen just once, that you are motivated by, that you identify with, and that you get a joy and energy from doing. To be able to do this is why I said before, they have to have certain competencies. The list is quite long, but when you filter through it, they come into the 4 one I mentioned: self-insight, possibility competence, decision-making competence, and transition competence. Career guidance is actually a very important part to be able to do this. If you match career guidance with career learning, this is competencies that you can develop in a person over time. Some people need a long time. Other people, they do, for example, the profiling, they're like, oh, they get to confirm a couple of things that they understood. They come to you, for example, for a little bit of help, and then they understand it. Other people take a long time because they're so programmed into being somebody that somebody told them to be, and they maybe never reflected on who am I actually? Who am I if I can choose? Who am I and what do I want to do if I don't follow anybody's advice? And this is the same also when we help people in transition now. A lot of people that are losing their job finds it very hard to find a new one because they say, my job doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't mean that their skills, their prior knowledge cannot be reused somewhere else. They just need to go maybe through a little bit of upskilling to fit the new jobs that are coming in. It means, for example, if you're an accountant in a bank, you actually can become a data scientist or a data analyst. You just need to be taught in the tools that are needed in those professions because you already understand numbers. You have worked with numbers your whole life. So it's just an upskilling of something that you already are interested in and motivated by to be able to go into something new. For you guys as practitioners, how the tool looks like is you guys can access to everyone. The system, because we have to be compliant with Europe, is GDPR compliant. It means that each candidate can actually remove themselves to you if they feel like it. It means when they're connected to you, of course, you have access to everything. You can even write notes. These are only viewable for you about what you were talking about, how it was going, how the session was doing, maybe what you should focus on. For those who have tried out the tool already, you will see that once you answer, you get quite a long kind of result page that describes the different types you got, the scores you got, what it means, and all these kind of things. And the same information you will get if you're a counselor as well, just angled a little bit different because you're reading it as a counselor, not as an individual. This is for you to start prepping. When we go through a certification process, one of the things that we teach you is how do you interpret these profiles. So when you meet the person, you already know a lot about them. How can I use that information to help somebody find the job and be employable in the future? An example can be as well that some people, for example, they always get called in for the interview, but they never get the job, right? Then it's a lot of other factors we have to look at. Is this something that they don't really care so much about how they look? Do they have the right haircut? These kind of very practical things versus actually coming there. One of the things as well is if you meet somebody that's extremely introvert, they are much more quiet than an extrovert. Extroverts are the ones that are preferred on an interview because they give of themselves very naturally. An introvert doesn't mean that they cannot, they're just a bit more quiet in the interview process. So a lot of people might find it unfair for them in an interview. These are discussion points you can start having into them to prep them, just for them to feel heard and seen. And you can say, are you aware that you naturally do this in an interview? We also have what we call a simple job matching in the system. It means every candidate you come in, you get to see this, the candidate don't. We have currently now 7 general job families, which is based on the crawling we did online, which each candidate get a color code to. So we have between best fit, moderate fit, and poor fit. It basically means that if they have green, this is a area that they match well with when it comes to the job match. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have the skills or the education there, but it means that they will get motivated by jobs within this genre. This is also a way for you to effectively sort of filter out where we should focus with this candidate. And that means also if somebody comes to you and they have a very different way, maybe they want to go into teaching, but they actually don't really have a fit with teaching, then you have to explore that with them and make them understand that as well. Because if you say, oh, you shouldn't do that, that won't necessarily stop them from pursuing the profession. But that means because you have to educate them, and is this the right choice for you? Based on having a job that you actually thrive in, that you're happy with. So basically what we teach you and how the tool works practically is about you get them to take the profiling. Once they come to you, this is where we can code in for you. You can either use the general ones we have. If you want to, for example, put in the skills framework that you have here in Singapore online and use those families instead of the ones that we have, that is something that can be done. To code that kind of thing, you can also manually code it as well once you are able to understand the tool. This is something that you can practice yourself. The point then is you can use either the web to understand this, or you're able to do it yourself and see if there's a match between what the person is saying that they want and actually what they want to do. We do believe in that the story and the opinion of the person itself has a lot of impact on it. So even though the system might tell them to do something, or the system might recommend a certain path for a person, if they're interested in something else, for example, I give with grace, it's the same thing we are practicing for every person. If they have a very strong opinion on doing something else, you have to take that into consideration and maybe see, is there a middle way between the two, between the motivation? If there's nothing, then the whole discussion should be around what motivates you and getting them to identify with the profile. One of the things that we see a lot, especially here in Asia, is that a lot of people have an education because that's the education they have or somebody told them. In general, a lot of people usually choose their education kind of on a whim. A lot of them do it because their parents said so, their friends said so, or that was what was cool at that point. And for that, a lot of people might not work in the same profession or even the same area as their degree. It doesn't mean that the degree wasn't good for something. It doesn't mean you can't use the degree, because they still have an academic degree, which says something itself. This is something we try to focus on as well with the profiling. For the profiling itself, it is also a recommendation tool if you want to add that on. For an HR, if you're an HR practitioner, it can actually be used in part of your recruitment process. It can be used as an HR tool within your company. looking at a career professional and somebody working with career development or a career counselor, the focus would be more around how to help somebody in transition phases. We see a lot of a boom now around the world about people that sort of midway in their career, between, or maybe they're a bit over that, 40 to 50, where they're starting to see, I want to do something new. Or they're fearing that their job is disappearing and they are very afraid of what is my next step. This is a good touch point for that, to get them to focus more on not their title or the industry they're in, but more about what are the activities that I am interested in. And where do these kind of activities apply in different new professions coming up? Where should I invest my time when it comes to upskilling myself? In what kind of training program should I go? And what should I focus on? For the younger people coming maybe straight out of university, it would be the same thing. Where should I go? It's also about teaching people to look for the right working environment. We talk a lot about job match. Job match goes beyond the job itself. It's also about the working environment. Do you have an office space, or is it an open landscape? Is pay what you actually earn the most important thing, or is that you have a great leader, that there is development potential, that you can climb fast? Is it a flexible environment, or is it very structured work hours? These kinds of things are we seeing that is more and more important, but a lot of people aren't really aware what that means for them. A lot of, especially young people, doesn't always take the time to reflect on these kind of things. Once, because they might never been in a position where they had the option to choose, or they didn't really focus on that in school because it's all about getting an education and getting the knowledge needed to be able to have the skill sets. So it's about taking all the steps needed. Of course, there's more to it when it comes to employability than what I'm saying, but this is what we are focusing on as the first step. Then we can look at skill sets. Then we can look at if you have the right competencies to go into a job. But you should focus on the person first and the job fit within that and the work environment.